There's another reason we don't live like this, where we don't show love for one another by brotherly affection, sisterly affection, by outdoing one another and honoring one another, by hospitality and passionate service. There's another reason we don't do that, and it's a simple thing called pride. It's a simple thing called pride. Have a look with me at verse 3 of Romans chapter 12. In fact, I'll read it from verse 1 because it's so good. So we'll just say it again. Verse 1, but we'll stick the exclamation mark at verse 3. I appeal to you, therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. In other words, your entire life is to be lived as an act of worship. All of it. Every bit of it. All right? Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good, acceptable, and perfect. And here is verse 3. For by the grace given to me, I say to everyone among you, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think. Why does Paul say that? Because that's what we all do. Don't think of yourself more highly than you ought to. But think with sober judgment, each according to the measure of faith that God has assigned. Have a look at verse 17. Repay no evil for evil. At 16. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be haughty, but associate with the lowly. Never be wise in your own sight. Why does Paul have to say these things? Because that's the natural bent of our hearts. Don't think of yourself more highly than you ought. But the natural bent of our heart, and particularly in our own culture, in the Western culture in which we live, is to think of ourselves constantly. The entire culture drives us to think of ourselves first and foremost. The most important love that you can engage in is self-love. You've got to love yourself before you can love anybody else. Right? It's like the unchallengeable datum dictum mantra of 21st century Western culture. Self. The worship of self. You see, we always think that because I thought it, I am right. I said it, I must therefore be correct. It came from me, and I am God after all. Because, the reality is, when we think of ourselves and put ourselves first in everything, we are making ourselves the God of our own little lives. And that's how we live. I want to be God of my life, and I want the universe to reorder itself around my desires. Thanks very much. That's why our advertising is what it is. Burger King, have it your way. ANZ, we live in your world. Well, that's good. It's very considerate of you. Yeah, we live in your world. How else would we get your money? Yeah. Samsung, the next big thing is you. UE Insurance, it's all about you. I've done this before. Like our advertisers know exactly what our desires are because they need to tap into that desire to part us with our money. And what's the desire that they tap into? Our desire to be the God of our own worlds. And it said they do quite well. I was going to use much bigger words, but probably not so polite. But they do quite well. And they're tapping into our desire to be our own gods. That's what we are. That's what we are. Don't think of yourself more highly than you ought. Oh, easier said than done, Paul. Pride is the killer of community. Pride is the killer of relationship. And we've all been here, right? Look, it's easy to point fingers at everybody else because that's our immediate response, isn't it? Yeah, I remember when that person said that thing to me. Man, that was prideful. That person's so proud, so arrogant. If only they were more like me. That's the first thing that comes into your head, though, isn't it? Isn't that the first thing that comes into your head? Yeah, that person. Don't think of yourself more highly than you ought. So here's the reality. None of us like being wrong. And when we find ourselves in that position, when we are challenged, what's our first response? Not my fault. Where does that come from, Mike? No, seriously, where does it come from? Where are you, Adam? It comes from Genesis 3, doesn't it? Yeah, Genesis chapter 3. God says to Adam, Adam, what's up? What have you done? Did you eat from that woman, that woman that you gave me, that you gave me, God. What's the woman's response? That serpent. Right? You see, it just makes total sense, doesn't it? Just flows straight out of Genesis. Like, pass the buck. This is someone else's fault. Who do you think Satan blames? Well, who made me, God? All fingers point back to you. Yeah. That's the way we roll. When we're challenged, when we're confronted by something we've done, something we've said, or something that we're trying to advocate for, but we find that we are in fact wrong, our first instinct is to try and either pass the buck, it's not my fault, or to justify ourselves in order to be seen as right. And we will dig our toes in. I know people that will argue that the sky is green, that the sun rises in the west, that night is day in order just to win an argument. They will say anything just to win the argument. And, I was saying yesterday that I've got a bit of a machine gun mouth, right? It goes at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and there's a brain driving that thing that's always redlining, right? It's just, yeah, that's the way I roll. And so when, in my younger days, when I was far less mature than I am now, far less mature and well-adjusted than I am now, I had that I was a right fighter. You think you're right, you think I'm wrong, let's get after it. Brrr. Any other arguments? Brrr. What about now? Brrr. Dead. Good, I win. That's the way it worked. And the Lord's been dealing with that in me. But that's the natural tendency of our hearts, isn't it? No, you may think I'm wrong. But, in fact, and out come all the excuses. Well, you have to take into account these things. It really wasn't my fault because, it doesn't really apply to me because all of these things, and it's, I'm the victim here, actually. Actually, I'm the innocent victim in this whole scenario. You should feel sorry for me. It's not my fault at all. Circumstances dictated that. Poor me. Poor me. Or, no, I was absolutely right. The sun does rise in the west. You're just looking at it upside down the wrong way around. You're the one who's wrong. If you actually go to the other side of the planet, you'll find it is in fact day. I was right. Yeah. That's what we do, right? The beauty of the gospel, to Maria's point, is that it frees us from all of that. It frees us from having to justify ourselves. It frees us from having to always be right. It doesn't matter. Let God be right, and every man a liar. I don't need to justify myself. I'm justified in Jesus. I'm justified in him. His grace is sufficient. And so I can say, I'm wrong. I got it wrong. I didn't turn my phone off in the middle of the service. I got it wrong. Right? So we can say that and just go, I'm sorry. Forgive me. How do we put this right? It's easy, isn't it? His grace is sufficient. His grace is sufficient for us, therefore it must be sufficient for one another. His grace is sufficient. Pride is the killer of community. Pride is the killer of relationships.